A round of applause. I know, awkward silence. All right, everyone. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for coming along to the LGBTQIA wellness, well, not wellness because we're all well, the panel where we're going to be talking about all things that we have gone through over the last couple of years. We've got some very special guests. Let's have some round of applause. Now, my name is Morgan. I am the host, but I will say us here is the guests and myself. So glad that you are here. So let's start with an acknowledgement of country, and I will say it is a very important part. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we meet here today. I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and that is extended to anyone here today as well. So a little bit more about who am I. My name is Morgan. I am known as, my pronouns are he and him. I live in Brunswick. I am queer. I run LGBTQIA plus events. You may have heard it. It is called speed mating, and it does aim to help people practice their social skills as well as build new friendships in queer community. I'm a mental health first aid instructor. I'm a proud cat dad. So that's Amy Winehouse. That's her name. I'm also the world's #1 Spice Girls fan. Yep. And I will say, in 2019, I booked flights to the UK just to see the Spice Girls. So I'll also say that getting up in front of everyone today, I'm so happy to be here, but I'm also a little shy. So if at different parts I start to go, whoo, that's me being shy. So that's who am I. Let's go on to the next slide. All right, so this is the intention for the panel. So the intention of this panel is to help us all to find ways to reconnect to queer community. We are going to do this by listening to the personal and professional stories of these lovely special guests. And at the end of the panel, there has been a certain amount of time left open for everyone to ask some questions here in the room. Unfortunately, for those who are watching live on social media, we will not be able to open up for questions, but anyone here in the room, there will be options to ask questions. Next slide, pretty please. So let's talk about housekeeping, because I do really want to make sure that you are going to have a great experience. So let's play the first game. Hands up if when the guest speakers are speaking, you'll say you were going to listen. Hands up. Yep, let's get an agreement. Cool. Also be aware that this is actually being broadcast live on social media. So if you go and grab a drink, try and be as quiet and respectful as you can, because I think sound will definitely pick up. Please make the best of the experience and know that there is going to be time for questions. And I'd also say, keep your hearts and your minds open to learning something new. Respect that everyone's experience or thoughts may differ, and be aware of any potential triggers for yourself and honour them. So say, for example, you know that you might feel triggered when we talk about things we've gone through. We will, at the end of this panel, give you some different ways to seek support. So, hands up if you agree to all of those. Awesome. Great. Next slide. So let's really, before we get started, I think we have to understand where we've been. So the first confirmed case of COVID-19 in Australia was identified on the 25th of January 2020. So the panel is broken down into 3 parts, sort of the before and the during and then the after. We're going to really focus on what happened and then what we're doing to get past it and get excited for the future. In March 2020, the Australian government established the Intergovernmental National Cabinet and declared a human biosecurity emergency in response to the outbreak. Australian borders were closed to all non-residents on the 20th of March, and returning residents were required to spend 2 weeks supervised in quarantine in the hotels from the 27th of March. And one of the things that I find most interesting is that over the last couple of years, I think in terms of our world placement, we actually had the most lockdown in any place of the world. So it looks like anyway any number between 267 and 300 plus days. Put your hand up if that was pretty rough for you. I know it was pretty rough for me. Yeah, we've got a few hands. Yeah. So that's sort of where we've been. But this panel isn't all about me. It's more about these lovely, beautiful people. So next slide, please. So question 1, we might start this way, if we can. Thank you very much. Can you please tell us your name, your preferred pronoun, and what you do within queer community?
Hi everyone, my name is Gene. My pronouns are he, him. To roughly sum up what I do in the queer community, I have a title of busy homosexual. I run events here. I'm an entertainer, also a drag performer. I'm a breakfast radio host on Joy 94.9. Photographer, journalist, like lots of different stuff, like elevating, connecting, and having fun within our communities and just doing a lot of stuff.
Thank you. Gabrielle.
Hi there, everyone. I'm Gabrielle de Vietri. My pronouns are she, they. I am an activist, an artist, a parent, and I'm the member for Richmond for the Greens in the State Parliament. And I'm also the LGBTQIA+ spokesperson alongside my other portfolios of arts, disability, renters' rights, and waste. What it means to be the spokesperson is that I hold the portfolio. So if there are if there's legislation that affects the queer community coming up, I'm the one to read it, I'm the one to decide on the party's position on it, to negotiate with stakeholders, to listen to stakeholders, to propose amendments and to decide on how we vote. I'm also the one to bring new policies and new ideas and legislation to the table for the Parliament to consider. It means I hold the relationships with the community organisations, with the stakeholders, with the individuals in the community as well. And it means that I am your advocate and spokesperson for new ideas and for kind of reactive things, which they seem to come up all the time. Unfortunately, when things happen in the community, like I'm the person who speaks on behalf of the Greens in Victoria.
Thank you. All right.
So I'm Meredith, or Mez, Butler. My pronouns are she, her, and I work at Switchboard Victoria in the Out and About program, which is an older person's visiting program and befriending program. So that's what I do in community when I'm working, and when I'm not working, I guess just general activism and supporting people within our community. That's me. And as you can tell, I'm not Joe Ball, so I'm a last-minute ring-in. So I'm not going to even try and be Joe Ball, but Joe was very disappointed not to be here for a last-minute thing that came up, but I'm very happy to be here and really looking forward to the panel.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name's Craig Bascand. I work for Thorne Harbour Health I head up the Sexually Adventurous Men's Project. It was the original first sub-brand of the Victorian AIDS Council at the time. So I go by Down and Dirty. So because my project's a little bit R18, we're harm reduction. So you won't see me at carnival. You'll more likely see me at a nightclub, a bear event, a fetish event. I look after guys that do beats, dance party scene, all that sort of stuff. My pronouns are he, him, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Last but not least.
Hello, Joshua Tavares, or Josh Mwah. He, they, that bitch. I'm a singer, I do community development, youth work, and I guess advocacy in terms of things on the housing estate. And I think what I try to do is, I guess, black queer stuff.
Awesome, thank you. So, next slide, pretty please. So, I want to tell everyone, over the last couple of years, we've gone through a bit of a tricky time where we all may have felt lonely, a little bit lost. And I think that I feel really lucky to have all of these people in my social network. And the idea, obviously, was to get everyone up and in front of you all to tell their story. So the next question is, why did you say yes to participating in this panel, starting with Dean?
Well, you were one of the reasons why, Morgan, in fact, like the way in which you communicate things and talk about them and want to create space for conversations that we might not be having or might not know how to have is one of the reasons why. And I mean, you asked me, and if I can lend my voice or share some stories that can help anyone create a space for themselves or create awareness that things are okay with them or something that they went through, then that's something really good.
Thank you.
I'm here because I feel like almost every week the queer community is dragged under the bus. I know as an activist or as somebody fighting for change within a community, it can sometimes feel like you're like shouting into the void that nobody's listening. So I'm here firstly to actively listen. Oh, hang on. Is there a difference between actively listening and listening? I don't
Yes.
know. Yeah. Well, I'm actively listening.
I love that.
And also to let you know that like there are people inside the institutions of government who are fighting for change, who are fighting for law reform, who are fighting for the funding needed to actually not just celebrate and make visible the queer community and all the iterations of it that are out there, but also to make sure that it is protected because it is so sorely needed, and we're reminded of that on a very frequent basis. I'm also here because I think within my own journey, which I'll have the opportunity, I think, to speak about a bit later on, making visible like the fluidity like of bisexuality, of pansexuality, is actually really important. For me, growing up, it was like that, you know, LGBTQIA plus people face all sorts of issues of discrimination and hatred and of invisibility. But I think for me, growing up, not having the language for a kind of fluid and changing sexuality, to actually now be in the role as a spokesperson, I feel like there's a role for me to play to actually inspire others to feel comfortable with an identity that you might not have a language for.
Love it. Thank you.
So a bit like Dean, I'm here because some of the conversations that we really need to have, we often don't have. And so personally, I'm really keen to have this conversation as part of community and continue the conversation about how we take what we've learned over the last 3 years about new ways of communicating and connecting and really embed them in the work that we do and the play and our lives. But also coming from a service provider that has 2 helplines in the LGBTIQA plus community, I guess we saw every day the impacts of COVID and but also saw the amazing ways that people were connecting despite the difficulties. So really keen to be having that conversation and seeing how we can go forward together.
Thank you.
That's kind of what I was going to say. That's being from a community org, I've had a similar sort of experience, and I've also just loved the way that Morgan's been reconnecting everyone. And I just kind of wanted to come and tell my story and say that it's okay not to be okay sometimes. Working in community, it's kind of like, for me, it was like the doors are open, we're back in business now, and I had to adjust to that really quickly. So, which has been difficult, and there are days that I still struggle with that as well. So I just wanted to sort of come and, you know, say that it's okay not to be okay and to reach out, which I'm not always the best at.
Thank you.
I'm here today because you asked.
I like that. And thank you.
I saw the panel. Also, I think that's it. I'm just here to be part of this conversation and I guess impart what I know or what I think I know, I guess, and also learn.
Cool. Now, I'll also say the good news is everyone here, these lovely people are talking from both a professional and also personal experience. So they might have something you may not have heard before, and they're also talking from the heart. So next slide, pretty please. So the next question is, how did you personally respond to COVID-19 arriving in Australia? And just a little bit more specifics around, did your daily rhythms or practices change when it actually first arrived? Or what emotions did you feel over the last couple of years? So starting with Dean.
Okay, just say those 3 questions again, because they were like 3. Just hit them for me again.
All right, so we'll just keep it nice and simple. When COVID-19 first arrived, how did it make you feel, and did it change what you did?
Well, for me, I was in the thrust of Pride season. So even though I could see what was going on and we knew that everything was going to be shut down at some point, I literally had come from Christmas, New Year's, Midsummer, Mardi Gras, chill out. At Mardi Gras, as soon as that ended, that's when we all started to see, okay, COVID started spreading around in Sydney in a really big way because everyone was partying a lot. People we knew and were very connected to were, thinking they were testing positive, and everything was shifting. And I remember at Chill Out, on that last Sunday, we were all dancing in the park going, we're pretty sure by the end of next week we're all going to be stuck in our homes. And we were. And the beauty and craziness of that Pride season for someone that works and performs in it, just like for many people who are part of organisations, and we sit on the other side to many other people who are partying or just running around, we have a different gear that we don't really get to disengage from till about April. So suddenly everything shifted in what we were doing and how we were doing it. But I'd been running so much and performing so much and doing so many events that I just kind of shifted that gear slightly. It really took a few months for me to really figure out what that was doing to my head. But I went into a gear going, this could be 2 months, this could be a month. I'm going to assume this could be to the end of the year. And pretty much week 1 started changing my patterns, assuming this is going to be affecting for a longer term. And if it doesn't, then I've just wasted a lot of money on virtual stuff in my home. And if it does, I'm a little bit more prepared.
And I'll also just call out, when COVID-19 first hit, your response to running online events actually filled my heart with so much joy, because even though I started to go so inwards, my friend and housemates just over there, do you remember us sitting on the couch and doing things like trivia online?
Just to give a little bit of context to everyone, the gears in which I went to, a response was made by the then LGBTQIA plus commissioner, Commissioner Ro Allen, to provide some much needed support for regional parts of our communities. And the Kerry and Dolly show was formed, in which I was the community darling. So I was able to go into a gear within my community to go twice a week in episodes. I'm going to create stories of things going on outside of my sphere. So I was able to connect with my community in a broader way there, and on Joy 94.9 as a part of the radio show that I was on there, Mad Wednesdays. So that was great. I pivoted out of doing trivia here at the LED into doing it online immediately, which was crazy and joyful, but thank you to my friend Cade, who did all that work behind the scenes to help. And also started doing LED events via Zoom. The underwear parties were the weirdest things ever on a Monday night. And it was doing the things that we normally do and events we normally do, and finding ways to help people connect, including Frock Up Friday, where I'd get into drag, connect a karaoke machine to my computer, turn it on at 8 o'clock, open bottles of wine and sing songs till about 3 in the morning that anyone could pick. So I just went into whatever gear worked because I had nothing else to do and I was stuck in my home.
Thank you.
It's drawing up quite a bit, actually, thinking through that beginning and all the, trying to identify what changed because of COVID, what changed regardless of COVID. I'd just given up. I just had my very last exhibition as a contemporary artist and kind of put a full stop to that practice, and also, I guess, kind of closed off my participation in that community as well, and I decided to pivot to the dark side, going into politics. So I launched into a campaign. Beginning of COVID, started homeschooling my kid who has significant learning difficulty, or not significant actually, learning difficulties for the first 2 years of their primary schooling. Had a stillbirth. Was elected mayor, came out publicly. So it was a big confluence of kind of events. For me, as I mentioned before, growing up I didn't have the words to describe who I was. I knew that I was pretty delighted to be in an all-girls school and quite enjoyed canoodling with my girlfriend in the back pews of the chapel. But beyond that, my sexuality was always quite private. Just, kind of my circle of friends, never felt the need to come out to my folks, / was really good at internalising society's bi-erasure. And so then in the throes of a council election campaign, Vic Pride Lobby asked us to kind of identify who we are, which is a great thing to do because we need those kind of like really concerted campaigns, but also made me go, oh, like now I've got to find a word and put myself in a box and declare that, and what if that changes, and what if I'm still evolving, and what if I'm not ready to make that statement. But of course I wanted to answer honestly, so found the word that kind of most suited me, and one thing leads to another, and elected mayor, and my dad's Googling me, and I'm really proud of my kid who's just been elected mayor. Oh, Star Observer says first queer mayor of Yarra. Actually, no, I'm not the first queer mayor of Yarra. We've had queer mayors before, but yeah, Yarra has a queer mayor. And calls me up and rather than a congratulation, he's like, oh, this explains a lot. I guess fast forward 25 years and, that's, it kind of precipitated my understanding of where I stand, and also my understanding that even without the words that I'd kind of always felt like I wasn't quite queer enough, and being able to kind of sit with that and understand that even without that really true sense of who you are and where you fit, that is absolutely valid. I'm digressing now. I think COVID was an opportunity for me to be comfortable with that, and a sense of responsibility came from that, to make sure that I can be one of those role models for someone else who might not quite know where they stand.
Thank you.
I think for myself, COVID, the first year of COVID was a little bit like yours. It was pretty eventful. So I have 2 people that I'm a carer for who live about an hour away. So that made that task really hard with the lockdowns. We pivoted to working from home really early at Switchboard. We took quite a cautious approach to flattening the curve. All this is coming back. It's really strange, isn't it, how it comes back when you start talking. So we worked from home very early, and I have to be honest, I love working from home. I'm a total introvert, and I'm lucky to have the space to be able to work from home comfortably, but it was very hard for a lot of our helpline workers. If you can imagine taking seriously traumatic calls in your bedroom in a share house with no, we set up supports very quickly, but that was really hard. And for a lot of our workers, we were really they were really happy to be labelled essential workers so they could actually go into work. But getting all that paperwork, getting the permits for them to go into work was a big shift. I was also diagnosed and having treatment with breast cancer that year, and moved house across the steel ring or whatever, what was it, what it used to be called, the ring of steel. So, there were a few challenges. I think for me, probably the hardest part was dropping my partner off for gender-affirming surgery and not being able to go in and be with them. That was really difficult. And lots of people will have similar stories about just not being able to be there for loved ones and not being able to have people with them when they were having treatment. But I think, I think the things that shifted for me were around trying to keep some sort of routine going, trying to walk. I went back to walking, and quite a few other people I talked to did the same, and just really trying to get a rhythm going. But I think there were lots of moments of real joy and connection as well, and just realising how many amazing people amongst our friends, or just people I'd never met in community, were doing things like you were, Dean. I mean, can I say that your presence out there was just amazing, to be able to connect into that and just see that joyful, celebration.
Agreed.
Yeah. But also there were lots of other people doing things like, setting up on their Facebook, tell me one good thing that happened today, or the Grateful Rainbow, or there were so many people who just started doing things out of nowhere. They're not funded to do it. They weren't asked to do it. It was just a really genuinely kind and also connecting for their own sake as well. It wasn't just doing a service for the rest of the community. It was like there was that real sense of we all need this and we can do this together. So, I felt that was really important as well.
Now, just before we move on to you, Craig, I'm just going to call out something. I think this is a really great example that even though you are all public figures, we all go through ups and downs. And that phrase that comes to mind is it takes a village to raise a tribe. The actual reason why I ran this panel, and I'm so grateful that all of you said yes, was it's all about reconnecting to queer community and understanding that we go through ups and downs, and what will get us through is each other. Over to you.
So I'll do the work part first. So behind the scenes of Thorne Harbour, we're all about data and statistics, and we got called into the boardroom, and it was like everything was in slow motion. Our CEO was rattling off numbers from the department saying 10,000 people are going to have COVID-19 by this date. This many people are going to die. This is going to and now you've all got to go home and do your job from home. And I'm like, fuck, how do I do that? I'm out in the community. So the good thing was, not the good thing, but the experience that we had at the org through the AIDS crisis was about, and talking to older people there, was working out how people responded in different ways. So we were one of the first people to put out COVID and sex, because not everyone has a really good support network. So the way that they deal with things might be through drugs and alcohol or through having sexual connection. So what we did is we were one of the first people to actually put out a guidelines around keeping yourself safer, sort of, having a small bubble if you were going to see other sex partners, maybe laying off places like beats and things like that you couldn't keep in contact, or contact the person that, if you were to test positive. I was going to say the online things were great. Dean, I came along to the underwear party quite a few times, but also to Spit and Polish, and Dean usually had to run off at the end to one of the 50 things that he was doing. And we ran what was called Down and Dirty Live, which we still run actually. And basically it was kind of kink practices, kind of like 101s. So we did like things you could follow along. We had Luke George, and you could do a rope tying thing, which is on the Down and Dirty website. We still got it. We had like a fisting one. Then we interviewed people like Trough-Man. I'm in a group called Lost Gay Sydney, and someone was like, "Is Trough-Man still alive?" And I was like, "I need to find out." So having a chat to him, I thought he was just the guy that lay in the urinal when everyone peed on at Mardi Gras, but he was a 78er. He was part of the gay liberation movement. The video's awesome. It's well worth a watch. It's up on the website. So that was some of the things that we did. One of the hardest things for me is I'm pretty open about my mental health struggles, but one thing because a lot of people don't really understand it is I suffer from PTSD, various things, and all the change coming at once really set that off for me. And I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on therapy and 15 plus years getting myself into a stage that I can get through life and start getting ahead. And it was like I'd gone back to the start. And I don't show my emotions a lot, but I just broke down at one point to my boss, our director, and he was amazing. And we sort of talked through things and, reached out for help and worked out what I needed. But definitely, I think what really kept me going was the online connection and, just sort of getting some sense of normalcy as well. And just sharing stories with that and realising that you're not alone and there are other people that are actually going through what you're going through. And it's okay to say that you're not okay. So.
Thank you.
How do you follow these people? I guess for me, it's like, when it first happened, I was like, is it real? you know, the pandemic, it's going through the world. People in Europe, my siblings in Europe are like, people are dying. Like, but is it real? My workplace, but so being a singer, everything stopped in like food, and my gigs all dried up. But I was more than a singer before, you know. There was more to me than this one thing that I do. So I had that conversation with myself earlier, but friends of mine, that was the thing they struggled with. Like, okay, without this thing that I do, who am I? And them trying to navigate that. My workplace was pretty good. So work at the Collingwood Neighbourhood House, and we pivoted to food relief, which, as a person who loves social interactions, that was great. We were able to give out food, make food. Heaps of the queer community was able to like come and support programs as well. And we were kind of smart, or cheeky, I should say, with, we want to do this thing. Yeah, we'll just write a work permit for it. We have to do drop-offs. Yeah, we can do that, you know. Just to like be creative with that. But also, I guess, with the lockdowns, it was quite harsh on the housing estate with what happened in North Melbourne and Flemington, which sort of gave a rise to a whole bunch of conversations with the Department of Family Fairness and Homes, which we're kind of grateful for, that they sort of went through that harsh lockdown, which allowed better conversation with them. But I think what I found hard was how do we support everyone in the community? People that are like vaccine adverse because of past reactions or whatever, or loss of loved ones because they had passed. I know some friends in high school, their children have passed from vaccines and stuff, and they're unable to go through that process and then vaccine their child for their health or whatever. So I found it quite jarring when health services sort of didn't allow people to be part of not take that service because they weren't vaccinated. So I think my friends and myself were like, okay, how do we navigate this space, or how do we support people in this space? Yeah, but like with all your stories, all these memories of us flooding back, we made it through, which is awesome. Yeah, I think that's all I kind of want to say.
Thank you. Now, I'm just going to ask the guests, this is a bit of an impromptu question. We've talked about some of the ups and downs moment. Do you feel like over the last 3 years, the person that you entered as is not the person you are now? Like you've learnt a lot about yourself?
Oh, 100%. Like I will absolutely say, look, there were very much difficult times, but I'm ridiculously grateful for the lockdowns, the connections of the community and the things that exist. I'm going to be really quick and touch on something that got brought up when I was listening to everybody. Compartmentalisation is something that I do very well, doing a lot of different things and running around like a headless chook. But we as a community as well know how to connect and communicate because we've had to do it for years when other people aren't doing it for us. And at this time, at the beginning of it all, it elevated everything in a really massive way. I just want to quickly share on a bit. One of the reasons why I was able to gear up so much was because all of the parties and queer venues except for the Laird had all closed. This was the only one still open. I managed the social media for this venue, which was interesting and crazy in lots of different ways. Every single day we were talking to the Department of Health and checking that should we open that day, what should we do, doing whatever they were telling us. Knowing, because we were talking to Thorne Harbour at the same time, that there was something happening and looming on the way, and we all knew what was going on. I was contacted by a person in government through the Equality Branch to let me know that one morning 5 emails had been sent through letting them know Dean Arcuri is spreading COVID from the Laird Hotel. They said, which is not an uncommon story when it comes to disease in our communities and how that happens. They said, at no point do we think this is the case by the data or anything existing in it, but can you please isolate? So I actually isolated before everyone else because they were like, can you just do this because someone is sending pictures of you on Smith Street as well. So for some reason, that is what existed and that is what someone did. So I had that little bit of extra time hearing the communication and listening to things to plan and organise. And in that, you know, I'm actually really grateful for the craziness of the last couple of years because I would never have grown the way I had. I would never have learnt how to do things better the way I had. I think one of the most important things that have come out of this for me is how much you don't need to sweat stuff that you constantly sweat all the time. Little things or frustrations you have with people or organisations or moments in time, if you can't let it go and you keep holding on to it for days and days like we used to, then there's something wrong with the way in which you're doing it, is the way I now process things. And it's making me be more open to people, more open to people's problems, and more open to the fact that we're all going through a lot of different things all the time and not be so insular. And I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that beyond the personal story of kind of like my own journey, I think that we've seen that as the problems that we face come into sharper focus through the pandemic, the rise of far-right extremism, for example, becoming more pointy and more collectivised. Actually, in response to that, we've seen that the need to collectivise, whether it's like as the queer community, whether it's a community of renters and public housing residents, whether it's a community of artists, all those communities that are at risk of dissolution, of vilification, of suffering under the strain of COVID-19 and the financial pressures that come along with that. They've found that each other, and they've collectivised in a way that I think the queer community is really like used to collectivising, like there's and does it in an exemplary way. But I think that the communities that the queer community intersects with have also begun to collectivise in the same way. And I think that weirdly my personal journey intersecting with that is that rather than kind of like packing down and internalising and kind of bunkering down in my own personal sphere, I was like, how can I accelerate this? How can I be a catalyst in this? And how can I bring this all together?
I think it was the last couple of years of pivot, just pivot.
Yeah.
What about you, Meredith?
I'm really allergic to that word.
I think we're desensitised, everyone.
Yeah, and yet I've used it about 3 times already, so there you go. Yeah, look, I feel like it's a bit of a blur. I don't feel like I can even answer that question to some extent, but I do feel like I have learned a lot and I have grown more clear about the things that matter and what I'm happy to let go of and just not bother too much about. But I think also there was a big difference between the first and the second lockdown. So I feel like the first lockdown, we're all in it. We didn't, it was a crisis. We all went into emergency mode and were, doing what we needed to do. And I think the second lockdown was just shit. It was just really hard. We'd been there before. We didn't want to be there again. We were a bit out of that emergency crisis mode where the adrenaline, goes and you really respond. And certainly that's what we were hearing from people on the helplines and through the older persons visiting program is this is just too hard and I don't, want to be here again. Interestingly, some of the people who were most isolated to begin with, so some of the older people or people with quite significant disabilities who were not in our spaces and our venues and our places to begin with, actually found lockdowns really good because everyone else was in the same boat. All of a sudden, they weren't missing out on anything because nothing was happening. All of a sudden, people were checking in with them because they actually understood what the experience was like. So that was really interesting to me, is that there's all those people who are not in our spaces who really could be, and I think it taught us all a lot, certainly taught me a lot about checking in with people who are isolated, because the experience, we all know what that's like now. So,
Thank you.
I actually wanted to bring up that about people being isolated too. And the funny thing was, I actually got more like in my job, I might see someone at a venue, or we might be doing something as some sort of engagement, and it'll be kind of like, here's the information, see you later, and you don't sort of, know what happens. But there were a couple of people that sought me out on other platforms personally, like Instagram, and there was one person in particular I can think of, and a bi guy, lived in a rural area, wasn't community connected at all, had very limited sexual health literacy, but was also kinky as well. And we got chatting, and he came along to a few down and dirty things, and by the end of it, he sent me this amazing message, and when we started to open back up, I made sure that he had someone to connect with when he came to the Laird. So he came to a rubber event, came out with someone. We got him a PrEP doctor that he could talk to. Just put him onto things like my website, and also like Drama Down Under, so he could know. Because sometimes in small towns, people don't, they might have don't want to go to the family doctor or whatever. So the feedback from that type of thing, I think that kept me going, and stopped me completely breaking down, because it was like, okay, people are actually responding to what we're doing, and just the feedback from all the other events that everyone else was running as well. People really appreciated it, because there are a lot of people out there that wouldn't normally connect with us, probably wouldn't walk through the door of Thorne Harbour or probably ring Switchboard, that you're able to pick up. And I think from that point of view, that just gave me a real boost, and I think that helped me sort of pick myself up as well and think, because I was in a bad place. I was like, everything's going bad, I don't know what I'm doing, but when you get that feedback, it was just what I needed as well to keep me going, as well as helping other people. So, yeah.
Thank you.
For me, I think I changed every time a lockdown happened. I learnt more, understood more, empathised more, given the chance to have like a forced slowdown, which was great, given the chance to have like internal dialogue with myself and have these conversations that people, I guess, only have that conversation at the end of their lives. And so I'm grateful for those type of things. I'm grateful for the conversations having with friends as well, going deeper and having honest conversations instead of these conversations. Oh, how are you? Yeah, okay, good, yeah. See ya, okay, bye. And actually properly, checking in and seeing how people are and seeing what support they need, and instead of saying, oh, we're worried about you. No, actually, how can I be a better friend to you? How can I support you? What things do you need that you don't have that I can do?
Thank you. So we're going to do a quick activity, because we've heard how everyone has changed and grown. Put your hand up if over the last couple of years you've had some ups and downs with your own mental health. Yeah. So we're all in this together. Second question, we're going to start to actually go a little bit more lighter. Who has learned something about themselves for the better over the last couple of years? Yeah. I recently had a conversation with someone, one of my friends, and they actually said to me, Morgan, COVID looks good on you. And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you actually mean? And they said, well, Cert 4 in mental health, you've become a mental health first aid instructor, you've got a Cert 4 in training and assessment. I had a teacher or a mentor early on in COVID said the only way you're going to get through having so much time is to go inwards and study or do something different. So there are definitely positives to this as well. Now, we're going to have to do a bit of a quick fire round. So, question 4. Looking back, how do you feel COVID-19 impacted our greater queer community? So maybe 1 minute, we'll go round.
Connected it. There are a lot of people who were able to speak up about not being okay, feeling alone, and those conversations continue to happen now. They've shifted in different gears in the way and spaces that we are, but the connections that existed are still growing and happening in different ways now, which is wonderful to see and experience.
So, having established the first Rainbow Advisory Committee, which Dean is a member of for the City of Yarra, I really noticed that visibility is a huge is something that's really important. That there's a gaping gap in funding for our community-led organisations, and that things like the things that were brought about by the pandemic, like social isolation, housing stress, mental health and other health issues, are really keenly felt by the queer community and the communities, the marginalised communities that intersect with the queer community. I also really saw the emergence of like the far right within this small community of the city of Yarra, but then also more broadly across the world, and like kind of felt it in like very specific ways, like when we expanded our civic flag policy to have individual flags to celebrate, Lesbian Day of Visibility, Bi Day of Visibility, asexual and aromantic awareness day, trans visibility, that really brought out the bigots from the woodwork, egged on by the Herald Sun. But then those, that's like, that's the softer end of the tail, and then you've got the more dangerous manifestations of hatred that present in displays of hatred that we saw on March 18 on the steps of Parliament. So kind of seeing how important visibility is, and how important, this isn't quick fire, but I think it's important, and like those symbolic gestures are in showing support for the queer community, but that they are meaningless essentially if they are not accompanied by the action. And that's what I'm trying to do now as the spokesperson in State Parliament, is really making sure that we put so much pressure on this government to go through with the reforms around anti-vilification, around expanding and strengthening the Equal Opportunity Act, so that the Presbyterian Church can't come out and like just put a ban on like gay leadership. It's just making sure that we actually prevent those kinds of really damaging things happening.
Thank you.
I think when I was talking to Morgan about this panel earlier, and we were talking about, the importance of being real and having really being very personal, but also wanting to, look at some positive ways forward. And this question is a hard one for me, because, to be honest, we just saw so many negative impacts for our community through the helplines and through the older persons visiting service, through our suicide prevention work and through the anti-racism QT BIPOC work. So there's a lot, and there's some research coming out now, not nearly enough. We need heaps more about the impacts on addiction, mental health, homelessness, family violence was a big one for our, many people. Being locked down is just so hard if you have intimate partner violence, or if you have family of origin violence. For a lot of young people, being stuck at home with their violent parents is just, awful, or siblings or whatever. So, we are starting to get some evidence of just how hard those impacts have been, both in the general impacts and also, LGBTQIA plus specific impacts. Some of them are things like, for the older people, many of the people in our program have no connection to anyone, but they've made their own supports through chatting to the local pharmacist when they go and get their scripts, going to the cafe, going to the post office. They've got this whole round of local services that they visit, and that actually helps them feel connected. So just even having that cut off, was major. So I guess, it's hard to look past the big impacts, but I guess, as we've all been saying, the other impacts have just been how everyone pulled together. So we had volunteers ringing us, who hadn't been connected to Switchboard ever or for years, going, I just want to do something, give me a job, and we had the City of Kingston queer youth group wrote letters to the people in the older persons program for Christmas, just helping them feel connected. So, so many absolutely fantastic things also happened from people just needing to find that connection. And I think we have to try and remember those things and build on them, as well as remembering that we do still have ongoing impacts that we need to look after.
Thank you.
Yeah, all that. Plus, something you said actually that I thought of as something a little bit different. That was how the queer community, I think, was impacted. I think people became more aware of other people's situation. And from that type of, I had friends that did amazingly well. A couple of my friends had both had government jobs. They put in a pool and landscaped their whole place. And when lockdowns were over, they were, before they were finished, they were planning business class holidays and things like that. But, I run my own business as well, and a lot of other friends were in the same sort of situation. So it was kind of, and from a personal point of view, one of my friends had a birthday just after COVID, and he ran 3 separate events so that people wouldn't miss out. Because I'm a big foodie, so if someone said, "Do you want to come to this latest restaurant and it's going to cost $350?" I would have been, "Yeah, absolutely," but I wasn't in a position to do that. So it was kind of nice to sort of be able to still be involved and not feel as though you had to sort of prove anything or had to put yourself in debt or do that thing. So I think people listened to their friends and to community more and asked them what they needed, as opposed to just sort of saying, are you okay? It's kind of like, what do you need? What can I help you with? How can we include you? And I think inclusion for me is the really huge thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess just echoing the same thing of, I've got nothing more to add, actually.
All right. So we've actually started to reflect on everything over the last couple of years, and we're now going to start to focus on the future and get excited. So there's drama going on stage. Is everyone okay? Let's go and have a 10-minute break. Feel free to go and grab a drink, and we will get back and started on the next round in 10 minutes. So enjoy, and we'll be here and enjoy. Right, welcome back everyone. So we've actually reached the halfway point, or just a little bit more than. I hope you're actually enjoying yourself and learning something new. So the next question that we're moving on to is, what are you most enjoying about being in a semi-normal, like we're not fully there just yet, what are you enjoying most about getting back into community?
So being an introvert, a lot of the things I'm enjoying most are actually quite solitary activities. But they're being out, so walking and camping and going, catching up with friends. But I'm also loving being able to see films and music, live music, fantastic, and also just going to community panels like this or community events and just being able to feel a bit more comfortable doing those things.
Thank you. The thing that I've enjoyed the most is, I guess, the amount of things that are on. I love it. But I guess the thing that I don't enjoy about it is like how expensive everything is. And the weekend that just happened, everything had a 20% surcharge on top. And I was like, oh, I cannot eat out. But loved being out. I love that my gigs have come back. I love that I get to choose which gigs I want to do. I love to see, I guess, a broader sense of what queerness is as well. And throwing events again, being at other people's events. I think that's everything, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the things that I learnt during events, sort of, just because, you know, they might have not been in my projects, so it might have been just to come along and watch something new. So I really love cooking. So one of the things they did with the cold communities was had people that weren't born in Australia come along and cook a dish and talk about their stories. So it really sort of not only gave me a bit of an education, but also really got me back into some of the hobbies that I'd sort of let go. And the yarning circles actually were really interesting, sort of not being a Kiwi originally. I've been here for 25 years, but I've always loved art and things, and rock art has really fascinated me. And I remember one day one of the panellists talked about something, and we'd actually been up to this area in the Woomera district and seen it, and I was super excited. So it kind of made me want to go out and see more of those things and just learn some more about my friends, really, and, you know, about where they've come from and their journeys, and yeah, that's what I've enjoyed doing.
Thanks.
I think for myself, I've learnt that value of actually kind of self-imposed lockdowns, looking after myself, of actually deciding when enough's enough to embrace JOMO, the joy of missing out, and to kind of balance that importance of having contact with other people and actually kind of just shutting yourself off and like going for walks and just those things that we learned to do quite well during lockdown, of like, being like alone with yourself, just looking after yourself, accessing the basic needs. I think as well we've kind of, like, I know we're going to the positive now, but there are multiple crises that are upon us, whether it's environmental crisis, social inequity, housing. There are so many crises, and I think during the pandemic we've learned to galvanise, to collectivise, and I think that we're going forward in a really strengthened position as a society. I think that we're able to combine that with in-person collectivising and really make voices that weren't previously heard. And I think that that's going to stand us in good stead for the fights that we have ahead.
Thank you.
From a community perspective, seeing how we are continuing to grow, open back up with events, but have it not all be in one gear. there's so much more of a space now where it's like, okay, am I creating something that's hitting a beat for every person? I think what you've done with speed mating keeps that conversation going, especially here, in a good way. You know, I know many parties that are putting active efforts into a quiet zone or a zone with a quieter sensory space. So they're making sure that there is elements for everybody. But also I am seeing within the community more people having conversations, not necessarily being okay and saying, if I can't step in fully, that's all right, and people supporting them in that, but new people stepping into spaces and communities that often have been pushed aside or just not been seen or vocalised. They exist within the space, and that's bloody wonderful. For me personally, creating more space for myself, even though I still run around like a headless chalk, and also realising that you can do things even though things might be tough, and you don't have to approach things in a different way. Being open to there being more pathways, and that getting to the end of a goal, whether it's making a meal or whether it's putting on a show, by the way, performing for audiences again is fucking wonderful, is a marathon and not a sprint, and you've just got to find the right pathway for you.
Thank you. Now, I'm going to just quickly turn to the audience now. I'm kind of curious. Let's do the hand up, hand down thing. Who is actually an introvert here? Yeah, we got a few. Who's an actual extrovert? A few? Who's...
Okay, I'm starting again. I made a rule that I wasn't trying anything new, so I went back to old favourites. So I literally would binge Grey's Anatomy and...
Thank you.
Well, now someone's opened it up to water sports. That's my... Pornhub's not a television show, is it? So, actually, yeah, I think after I watched a lot of trash, Tiger King I just got totally swept in by. The thing that I did enjoy as a bit of a guilty pleasure, and probably was a little bit embarrassed sometimes because I sent out too many, was swapping nudes with people and then running into them.
Kind of awkward, isn't
having
it?
to say, yeah, thanks,
Thank you.
Guilty pleasure would be catching up with friends for coffee, but having Negroni in your sippy cup. But everyone at 7 a.m. is drinking coffee, but you're not. Amazing. Then I guess shows I was watching, yeah, I was just binging everything. Mainly cartoons. Rewatching Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, anything anime, Big Mouth. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think my guilty pleasure was probably afternoon naps. And in terms of TV, I don't feel like I watched as much TV as perhaps I could have, but definitely I got on to Schitt's Creek, which I'd never watched before.
Who loves Schitt's Creek?
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that was my guilty pleasure.
So in that last little segment, we had pissing in the shower, golden showers, sending nudes, Schitt's Creek. I think that was a good quick fire round, I think. All right, next one. All right. What advice do you have for any guests listening, so here in the room or potentially watching on live stream, if they're struggling to get back out there and they're starting to go, I haven't been out since COVID, what do I do? What support is available? What advice would you have for them?
I think I did a little poll at work about this just to see what people would say. But I think go slowly and be kind to yourself. One of the things I really feel strongly that we haven't quite got there yet in our community is making masks sexy. You know, we're so good at making public health restrictions sexy in our community, and we've done it for years, and, you know, we've got so many creative people out there, and I think, you know, it'd be great to have some really fun and exciting masks, and also make it okay to wear them if people feel like they need to, because there are lots of people who need to wear masks for all sorts of reasons, and sometimes it can be a really compassionate, kind thing to do, even if you don't feel you need to, just to wear one so someone else feels comfortable being in spaces.
Thank you.
I guess I would like to echo the same thing with wearing masks. Say puppy play is fun. Also, go slowly. Go at your speed. If you need to withdraw, then take yourself out and, come back. Maybe try your hand at volunteering at some stuff as well. See if that is a good space for you to slowly integrate yourself into different spaces and find out, how you feel in different spaces and relating to different people.
Thanks.
I was going to say volunteering actually, because everyone can give a shout out to my lovely Thorne Harbour health people here that have
Round of
volunteered
applause.
and also help Morgan with speed mating. So volunteering is a great way to get out. Also, just asking friends to introduce you to other people in the community. A lot of the social groups are more, there's usually a couple of people on the committee that are more than happy to sort of take your hand. And I always tell people, if you come out somewhere and you don't know anyone, don't sit down the back of the bar on your phone, because you're not going to meet anyone. No one's going to come up to you when you're on your phone. I always say stand by the bar, because it's usually a place that people are away from their friends, and they might say hi and, hopefully invite you over and start up a little bit of a conversation. But getting out of the bars and trying other stuff too. There's lots of things going on. There's sport. I thought I'd try a few things. I thought I'd try something easy. A friend said, you should come and try badminton. I almost died. It's so hard. I've never been so sweaty in my entire life. So true.
I think that could be a kink to some people.
Yeah, well, I thought it was pretty good. Anyway, so just take it slow. Find something that you're comfortable with, and if you do find that you are struggling, just reach out to someone, or otherwise just take yourself out and don't beat yourself up. Like if you go home after you've only spent half an hour up there, at least you've tried, and it's baby steps. Everyone goes at their own pace. It's not a race.
One thing I'm just going to say that to you, Craig. I like what you said just there, because I find that if I go out to the Laird here, or if I go out to like an event, I get really like ballsy and honest. I go up to someone and go, I don't know anyone. I'm really anxious and I'm a little bit introverted. Can I sit with you? And most of the time, you leading into that vulnerability means that people will go, yeah, let's do that. Lots of good conversation that way. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that connects in with what I was planning on saying, which is let people know what you need, and whether that's kind of, I need a friend to sit with right now because I don't know anyone, or whether it's attending an event and calling up the event organizer beforehand and saying, what's your plan for COVID safety? Because, I'm immunocompromised, or, I have a disability and I need to make sure that this is a COVID safe event. And speaking from experience, we had a renters forum last week, and we had people call up asking us that question, and it actually made us go, oh, that's right. We are still experiencing the impacts of a pandemic. We need to make sure we have a place and plan, and we need to communicate that. So, you doing that might be the catalyst to actually open up that possibility for a whole lot of other people to attend who might have otherwise been holding back. So I think, communicate to people your needs.
Love it. Thank you.
Communication's a big, one that I would echo in a massive way. I want to stress as well, it's okay if you aren't out yet, or haven't been going out, or aren't doing anything normal to what you used to do before, or looking at other people and thinking, I'm not meeting that mark. It's not about what anyone else is doing, and it's only about what works for you. As a person who manages many social medias for many different things, you don't have to wait till you're in the venue to ask the questions. I've got to admit, Marcus shuddered a little bit, Craig, when it was like, just hang at the bar, and for the bar staff, they're dealing with a lot of different people, so it can be something a little different for them. But a lot of people still, even we got this week, will send messages through to, say, the LED social media, other ones going, I'm really anxious, I'm really nervous. When's a good time to come? Well, what kind of an experience are you after? If you don't know people, do you want to hang quietly, or do you want to be... Like, the number of times I give breakdowns to people about good times to come to Sunday Social, depending on that day, how they're feeling about engaging and what it means for them. Engage with the conversation. It's like doing research, and you don't need to do it that week. You can do it a couple of weeks later. We have people on the other lines of things, whether it's phones or whether it's online, who have put in the thought process and put in this work to be able to help guide you through. And like you said, you can come to something and if it's not for you or you're feeling really anxious, do 20 minutes and let that 20 minutes be an achievement. You know, nothing is too big and nothing is too small. You only have to rate it on yourself and what you feel comfortable with.
Love it. Thank you. And I'm also going to say self-care is actually a really sexy practice. And I will say one of my friends who I met at speed mating, shameless plug there, we actually go to the movies. So it's an introverted activity. So everyone's version of self-care might be different. Next slide. So this is the lovely part where I'll get another guest to come on out. Round of applause. We have Damien.
Hello.
Tell us about yourself, Damien.
So my name is Damien. As you can see, I am the current Mr. Australasia Bear. My pronouns are he, him, and I have a bit of a unique story in relation to COVID and lockdown. I was 6 months out of prison when we went into lockdown, and so that triggered my prison mentality again, which was really difficult because I was finally free, and to be locked at home all day, all night. I just got myself a job in hospitality, and then to go home and to do absolutely nothing was really upsetting. I managed to find myself a job with energy provider as the vulnerability support area, which was not good for my mental health because I'd just come out of prison, trying to find myself again, trying to socialise, and then dealing with the impacts of the lockdown and dealing with everyone else's impacts of the lockdown in regards to finances and their struggles was a poor choice for me to go into that area, but I needed a job. So I quit that and I started making macarons, and I created my own business called Risk It for the Biscuit, which is a little bit play on the words with prison, but that all finished once we reopened, and I am now an assistant manager of one of the highest grossing venues in Victoria, with a criminal record, so I'm pretty happy with that.
Round of applause.
Thank you.
Good job.
And that's the short end of my story with lockdown and COVID. But I'm here now to find out what questions you have for our panel. Does anybody have any questions? Do not be shy.
Any questions?
All right, I've got one. Oh, you're pointing over here. I thought you were pointing at you. Sorry. Here we go.
Thank you. I have a question for Gabrielle. We've seen recently with what happened at Parliament, people that have not a very good view, a lot of hatred towards our community. How can people come out and be active and attend events like this whilst also feeling safe and like they're not going to be attacked or, you know, made to feel very, very bad about themselves?
Thank you. That's a really good question, and yeah, one that I think a lot of people are asking themselves. I think some of the things that I heard on Trans Day of Visibility were really helpful in understanding how that can happen. That day, but actually every day of the year, is not just a day for trans people to be visible, because they are, you know, in the current circumstances significantly at risk, and I can understand feeling unsafe, that actually it's a day for allies to be visible, and that allies have a really important part to play as the kind of armour, and to be really outspoken in uplifting, in supporting the trans community. I think that there also needs to be not just words, not just gestures, but significant changes to our laws to make sure, to signal that that kind of display of hatred is not acceptable. We have anti-vilification laws right now that protect people on the basis of race and protect people on the basis of religion, but we don't have the same kinds of laws that protect people on the basis of sexuality or gender identity or HIV/AIDS status or disability. We need to expand those anti-vilification laws to send a very strong signal that that is not okay, that we will not tolerate transphobia in our community. And I think until we have that galvanised in law, I can understand that people in our trans community will continue to feel unsafe. Yeah.
So I guess for me, with recent events, another level of safety that we're trying to implement at the roller disco, and I guess other things that we're trying to do, is making sure that all our security are aware of potential people coming in. Bar staff are aware. We have a safe space as well, and we have a safety officer. So then they're easy identified in the crowd. People can go up and be like, I don't feel safe, this thing's happening, to, I guess, remove people from the venue. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, tell us more about roller disco.
I guess with a group of friends, we run and curate the Collingwood Underground Roller Disco, traditionally on the Collingwood Housing Estate in the underground car park. And that's a way in which we break down the social stigma attached to public housing by inviting the greater community on. We try and be as inclusive in all the ways we know how. We're economically inclusive to be socially inclusive. It's a party. It could happen anywhere, but it happens there for those reasons. It isn't a queer party, but it is by the sheer nature of it being a roller disco and me being involved. Okay.
Good work. Any other questions? Anybody else got a question? Yes.
Can I actually just, sorry to interrupt.
Okay. No.
Can I throw that question back to you and ask, like, what you think is needed to for trans folk to feel comfortable in those spaces? Because I feel like my answer was like a tiny little portion of that pie.
Your answer was great. Look, I'm not sure. This is one of my first events to do with LGBTQIA+, of that nature. But all I can say is that when I was watching that I saw it on the news, and even as someone who doesn't go out very much, I haven't been to any sort of demonstrations, I still felt scared. I did feel better that it was condemned, but there were some things about it that made me feel like, I don't know, it made me not want to leave the house. I'm not sure what could happen. I have a good support system at home that made me feel better. I have loved ones who are very supportive and will always protect me. But I think what Josh said was really good. You know, organisations having active, staff that are there to recognise those things and say, okay, we have these things in place to make people feel safe. If something's not safe, we know how to act. I thought that was really good.
And I think in that line, we need to make sure that we have a really close look at the police behaviour on that day, and that there needs to be some pretty rigorous analysis of what went wrong in terms of the policing of that event. I could go into more detail.
Right, I've got you. All right, there we go.
Thank you. So you talked a fair bit about the reflection that a lot of people did over the course of particularly the early couple of years of the pandemic. And I remember back towards the end of 2020 when we found out that there was a worldwide shortage of pup hoods because so many people had discovered that kind of play in lockdown, because it's something obviously that you can do safely. Then as things started to open up, I know that me and a lot of the people who I was involved with realised that we had no idea who these people were and no idea of how to reach out to them. There we go. There's one. Hey! Thank you, Miru. Yes. So what would your advice be to community leaders and organisers about how to make sure that we're kind of getting out to the people who are now part of our communities but have never really been part of our communities before, and we don't know who they are?
Yeah, that's a tough one, actually. It's one of those things, it's just casting the net far and wide and trying different things. And giving people the tools to be confident enough to come back and ask questions. That's kind of what we did with online forums, advertising in different places, going through community members. If you found someone from a small town, I'll give you a bit of an example of something that happened. A friend of mine moved into a small regional area. It was supposed to be for 12 months, and he's involved in the kink scene as well. And it was a really good career move, and he was 4.5 hours away from anyone. And we ran an online event, and we collected postcodes for data for the department. And I noticed that one of them just happened to be the postcode of this area that the person was in. And it's not something I would normally do, but I sent an email through Eventbrite actually, and said, hey, I've got a person who comes along as well. I notice you've started being a little bit more active in the chats that we've had online. Would you consider meeting up with this person to include them? And they've developed a really amazing friendship. So yeah, my advice is just casting the net as wide as you can, really, to get people involved. And
So one of my most favourite things to do during lockdown was actually be a delivery driver for Eagle Leather. And I would drive around. I got the exemption to be able to drive around, and you knew that what you were delivering to people, and you knew that night they were going to have a very good time, like a very good time. But this, how we're doing things and how we're opening them up has evolved more, especially for Spit and Polish, say here on Thursday nights, and with a lot of different spaces we're doing online in an attachment to physical events has been a really helpful way to continue the communication and opening a space for people to be able to step in without necessarily being okay. I've seen a lot of groups started doing, a group of us will be here half an hour earlier if you don't know anyone, come along. So really just creating different redefining structures for people to step into when they don't know anyone, instead of at the height of an event when some play might be happening or people might be a little bit drunk, and then people might, get excited or make a misstep in a certain way with how they're communicating with someone. So I'm seeing within a lot of the kink and fetish communities, just creating more online communication and also space within the events and what they're doing, just to allow people to have the space to be able to step in if they're not a part of that usual core. But it was one of the great joys of lockdown for us all to just realise how much we're into the same things together.
Thank you. So, who's been to speed mating here? I'm kind of curious. Hands up. Now, speed mating is all about not having to drink, not having to have everything put together, e.g. your social skills, if you want to practice your social skills. It could be those people who really want to make friends. Now, this is not a plug, but everything that you were just saying there, I'm finding that the more I run, this started in December 2022, and I've now run like 4 or 5. Let's all stick together. I find that the more people come, the more someone goes, hey, I felt really safe at an event that I didn't have to drink and I could practice my social skills. Whatever the event may be, whether it be spit and polish, speed mating, some of the kink events, let's know that it takes a village to raise a tribe, and we can all think of each other and go, hey, do you want to go to this with me? That's all I want to say there.
I know you weren't trying to plug speed mating, but let's just have a shout out for it. It's absolutely a brilliant event. Happens here for cis and trans men who identify as men, but also there's one in conjunction with Thorne Harbour for queer people and broader parts of our communities. And it really is a different way to connect and engage. You should be really proud of what you've created and the way that I know people who continue to come back, and that's a great way for them to be welcomed and seen, and it's really wonderful what you're doing.
Okay, back to the floor. Anybody else would like to ask a quick... Yes? Okay, here we go. Put your hand up high because I'm short.
Thanks, Damien. One thing I regret not doing during lockdown was starting my own side hustle. Craig said he runs his own business. Damien said he started his business. I want a side hustle too. How do I get one started?
Alt Twitter. OnlyFans. It's like, I know a lot of people that have done it. I wouldn't go to the OnlyFans route because I'm not that technologically savvy, and but I put a few things out there. It was mostly just I started up an old Twitter just to look at other people's stuff, really, because I was bored. And I ended up chatting to this guy from New York, and he was like, "Can I buy your underwear?" And I'm like, "Okay, this is a scam." And I gave him my PayPal, and the money turned up in there. So, yeah, I was like, does anyone else want a pair? It didn't make me a lot of money, I'm not going to lie. And postage was crazy. So I kind of had this, like, you pay for the postage and send me 2 pairs of underwear back, and then I'll send you 1 back kind of thing. But yeah, just looking for little opportunities. I know a lot of people that started up food businesses, or another friend of mine had... I'm not much of a gardener, a frangipani tree, and he'd like cut cuttings off that and sold those. So people, he's not really even a gardener at all. So just looking for little opportunities. I think probably because we were a little bit bored, we did things that we may not have necessarily done anyway. But yeah, if anyone wants to buy any underwear, yeah, look, I've still got bills to pay.
Look, I think that with any side hustle, whether it's sexual or not, it's just got to feed your head and heart, because it's not necessarily going to feed your wallet. And if you're passionate about it, you'd be amazed the way and creative ways you'll do things or try to do things. And what we did learn in this experience is just like what you said, what constitutes a side hustle is very broad, very different, and can be many, many different things. So find something that brings you joy, you'll find it brings someone else joy, and then it might just make you a little bit of money.
Okay, back to the floor. Anybody else got long arms that they can shut up so I can see? Questions? Yes? Perfect.
Thank you. Sorry, excuse me while I articulate this. I guess the pandemic and the situation we had, particularly in Victoria, changed the way that we engage with people professionally and personally. Just technology as an example. In what ways have you observed that the way that we relate or engage with queer community has permanently changed since that time?
I would say either Craig or Switchboard would be a good way for this, because both your organisations have absolutely shifted gears a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of our events have gone online. So we also understood that over time too, if you were working, a lot of people were meeting on Teams, on Zoom and other things as well. So people were getting a little bit tired. So you kind of had to keep things creative to keep people interested. So I think the most successful things were the more creative ones. And also keeping people that weren't tech savvy up to date with things and helping them along as well. So, during lockdowns, we'd sort of say to people, look, are you able to use Zoom? Are you able to do this? Or would you prefer to watch a recording of this later? Which some people would. Some people were just like, I'm zoomed out, or I don't know how to use it, or whatever. So it's kind of upskilling people as well. And keeping things creative and just to keep people engaged, really, I think is probably the main things for us.
Very similar for us too. So we, within weeks, had to change a phone line, that was with very old, outdated technology in the office and provide the technology for people to work from home. And that's been fantastic. It was hard work at the time and a bit of a panic, but it's really changed the way that our helplines work. Starting a new mental health helpline with the Rainbow Door during the pandemic was quite hard work, but again, it's just been fantastic and has really proven a need. One of the things that I love that Thorne Harbour did, which we really benefited from, was extending the Rainbow Connections program and also sourcing food from some airline and very amazingly, and just feeding people, which was just incredible for a lot of our people. So there's sort of no limit, I guess, we've learnt to the things that we can do, but it's hard work, and we need to support our staff and we need to support our volunteers to do it well. We need to check in with people. Of course, with the demographic that we work with older people, many of them still have button phones. Lots of them don't have the internet, and it's not necessarily because they're not tech savvy. Some of them can't afford it. It's, you know, the last thing on the list that falls off at the end of you know, pension week. But there are many who just really are not comfortable with tech at all, don't want to talk to someone on the phone. So we have done lots of care packages. We always mail out our newsletter as well as emailing it, which is these days a lot harder to find someone who'll print it for you and do all the, envelopes and things. It's kind of really archaic, but it works for people, and it helps people feel that someone cares for them. I've completely forgotten about what the original question was.
You're doing good.
Sorry.
Do you feel like you got the answer?
Yeah, so I guess, you've actually kind of touched on a few of those things, like the fact that now physically printing something is completely different from before the pandemic. And, you know, you talk about appointments, like telehealth is now the norm. You can get that. We didn't have that really before. And so I guess I'm curious to know how you've seen those sorts of things come up now, post-pandemic, in your sort of spheres. So, yeah.
I think lots of those are really positive. Like telehealth is just amazing for so many people, as long as it doesn't completely replace, you know, face-to-face. And I think we are learning to do things differently. I think, you know, the idea of having quiet spaces has become much more, as someone mentioned, become so much more common. Making sure that everything is online and accessible so that people don't have to actually physically turn up. But if they do want to turn up, that we're thinking about more than just wheelchairs, that we're actually thinking about quiet spaces, we're thinking about sensory issues for people, we're thinking about, as we've talked about, making people feel confident. The half hour before is really important for meeting up with people. And I guess, you know, with our services, we're just at that point of actually exploring what that looks like on an ongoing basis. So we've been doing the crisis stuff, and that's kind of become quite embedded. And now how do we continue that on an ongoing basis so we can still have the online space available for people. The other thing that we did with our staff, and similar to what Craig was saying, was Zoom is just so demoralising after you've done your, you know, 4th or 5th Zoom meeting or Teams. And so just doing things like using breakout rooms much more creatively, doing check-ins, spending a lot more of the meeting on people just connecting with each other, not about work, has been really valuable to just mix it up and not just be talking about work all the time.
Awesome. And thank you everyone for your questions. If we can move on to the next slide. So this is a quick fire round, maybe starting with you, Meredith. How can we stay in touch with you and the good work that you do? Quick fire round.
So we have the 2 helplines, and the Q Life is open 3 p.m. till midnight every day of the year. And also Rainbow Door is open 10 till 5 every day of the year. So they're both helplines that you can ring. All the details are on our website, which is switchboard.org.au. Out and about, you can contact me. We also have the Suicide Lived Experience network and the bereavement groups, which have been really powerful, and the Cutie BPOC workshops. So it's all there on the website, but also you can just ring one of the numbers, and if you ring Q Life, they'll let you know what else is around, including what other services are around in your local area as well.
And everyone, Q Life actually has a chat option as well, and I've actually used it myself.
Me personally?
Yeah, how do we stay in touch? Social media?
Social media is great. Jojo, J-O-J-O, Tavares, T-A-V-A-R-E-S, 20 is my handle. Also, you can volunteer at the neighbourhood house. I guess those are the ways to keep in contact with me. But I do, encourage people to volunteer at the local neighbourhood house and, see what's going on there. And if they don't have something that's queer, maybe that's a space in which you can encourage them to do.
I also want to go to the roller disco, FYI.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. We did run a queer one, a strictly queer one at the start of this year. We don't have a space at the moment. So we are in the middle of having a pushback with the government with trying to save our open air space on the Collingwood housing estate. We did have the opportunity to take up the Honda Centre just up the road, and that was fun, but I hope soon. But if you want to get involved with the pushback that's happening on the housing estate, please, we would love your voices and your hands and your mouths and your feet.
So social media, very important.
Social media.
I'll sort of talk about this in two parts. So I'll talk about Thorne Harbour. You can go onto the website. There's a whole lot of great stuff coming up. There's the LBQ Women's Conference coming up. There's trans and gender diverse services. There's all the therapeutic groups. There's family violence, AOD, all that sort of stuff's on the website. My website, Down and Dirty, some people think, it's all kinky, it won't relate to me. But there's some really fun stuff. We made a video that's just absolutely gone bananas. We made a really fun video on douching. And we were pretending we were roving reporters in Smith Street looking for someone to talk about butt stuff. So it's actually quite funny. So that's in the live video section. There's a whole lot of harm reduction stuff on there. You can ask a question anonymously. And we get things like, how soon can I go back to having sex after prostate surgery, which we'll put to doctors from the Centre Clinic, or Dr. George does a lot of stuff for us. Drug and alcohol questions. Some people send in rather odd things like, can I put GHB down my pee hole? And it's like, please don't have done that. But anything that people ask anonymously, we'll ask a specialist, or what does a cock ring feel like? Or how do I know what size to use? And what we'll do is we'll post the question and then also the answer as well, and it'll be anonymous, so people will get the information they need. So whether it's a health question, a kink question, or just anything basic. So plus I have a lot of service is listed in the link sections, Switchboard and a ton of other things on there as well. So it's cool, and there's some sexy pictures on there. It's a little bit more raunchy than any of the other Thorne Harbour stuff. That's sort of why you won't see me advertising at Carnival and sort of more inclusive events. That's it. So hit me up if you've got anything interesting. And we'll come along to Down and Dirty Live, which we run still once a month on different topics. The next one's on Campfire Events, which is a kink and fetish camp that's held out in Benalla.
Yay, awesome, thank you.
Unfortunately, I can't promise I'll have sexy images or answer any questions about cock rings, but you can get in touch with me for a whole variety of other reasons, whether it's, your renting situation or stuff around the queer community, or, or if you live in this electorate, about basically anything. I'm on all the socials. You can find my email address on the Parliament website. My office is on Gertrude Street. You're welcome to walk in, and I may or may not be there, but one of my staff will be there. So easy to contact, and you can always, through a kind of triangulation of people, you'll probably be able to pinpoint where I am at any point in time. So I'm always out and about. Feel free to come and chat with me after this if you'd like to, make a time to catch up. And more than happy to be at your disposal to, as your spokesperson in Parliament.
Thank you.
You can hear me on Joy 94.9 between 7 and 9 a.m. weekdays, and always connect there. here at the Laird on Wednesdays, where I host Trivial Hirsute, and Friday nights, where I host Sing Stud. Many people come and chat to me then. Fun and games. And obviously, social media. Genus with the Big on Instagram, Gene Arcuri, Gene Nation on Facebook. And what a lot of people have been doing in lockdown and since lockdown, 90% of my communication on Grindr, Scruff, and Recon is all people asking questions about what's going on in the community. So whether it's online or in person, just come and say hey.
And what about, last but not least, Damien?
Oh, hi. So I'm also the Vice President of the Vic Bears. So the Vic Bears is for male or male identifying bears or bear admirers, bear friends, bear cubs. But really anybody can come to one of our events. We hold a den night here at the Laird every fourth Saturday of every month. Little plug, next weekend is our birthday. It is free. We're having a big party here. So please come along.
There'll be a barbecue as well, and it's
Barbecue,
masquerade themed, so
cake,
get a mask.
Masquerade. Mike is really excited for it. Can't wait. Beg your pardon? Preferred to wear your sash if you have one. But also, I'm part of the Melbourne Rainbow Band. I'll just quick plug. Johnny over here is also the current Mr. Vic Bear. I'm part of the Melbourne Rainbow Band as well, where I'm one of the senior members of that group. So I'm always approachable in person here at the Laird, out on Smith Street, at the Bears, at the Rainbow Band. Come and find me.
And Morgan, if there's any male or male identifying people that would like to connect in a different way, say it's speed mating, why don't you tell them about that?
Sure, every third Tuesday. Here
Next
at the
week,
Laird.
in fact.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. But I will say that is on the next slide, so good segue. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. You can follow the Laird Facebook page. You can also stay in touch with me, all things speed mating, through my Facebook page or Eventbrite page. I guess I really just want to call up, before we wrap stuff up, if you yourself are experiencing mental illness, e.g. anxiety, depression, or something else, or even just big feelings that you need to talk to someone, you've got Lifeline 13 11 14, which is 24 hours a day. Q Life, as spoken about with Meredith, that's chat or phone. So the phone number is 1800 184 527, or there's a chat, I think it's through like qlife.com. So actually, qlife.org.au. Next slide. And if you want to come along to speed mating, whether you're boy, girl, other, anything in between, speed mating is every third Tuesday, and there's one coming up, the first ever all genders version of speed mating on the 4th at Thorne Harbour. So thank you very much for supporting me on that. So final thoughts. Tell us, maybe starting with you, Meredith. Final words of wisdom or encouragement for the audience, whether it be online or here in person.
I feel like just trust ourselves and each other. Like it's as we've all said, I don't really know that I have much else to say other than just take it at your own pace. Ask someone to come with you. If you don't know anybody, then just come along early. Find spaces that suit you. So it might be your sporting club, or it might not be a queer space at all. It might be your local book club or somewhere where you have mates and you are connected, and that's also really really valuable. And for event organisers, I guess, and service organisers, it's just around whatever way to make it make things accessible is really valuable. So, for example, all the Queen's Men have been running a monthly LGBTI plus elders dance club down at Collingwood Town Hall, just around the corner, which is fantastic. And at a certain point, we made a video of just showing people literally how to get from the station and where the accessible ramp is, and here are the people who are going to be there. So whatever you can do to actually make people feel more comfortable and feel like they're not walking into an unknown space. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming, and even coming here is a great start for some people. So
Thank you. I guess I want to just say the same things, and be kind to yourself, go at your speed. I guess no question is a stupid question. It's about learning. It's about yeah, all those things.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know what else to really say, but mine's the same sort of thing as well. Just sort of go, in speed, try different things. Just come to things that are fun. Come to trivia on Wednesday. Speed mating, Vic Bears events are always super welcoming. Give things a go.
I like that.
Yep, all those things. Try to be comfortable with discomfort, with not knowing. It's okay to not ever bed things down. Nothing is permanent in a good way, because when we come together, we can actually be really powerful. When we come together, we can be a really strong force for positive change. And if we want to see that change in whatever way, it has to be really deliberate. It won't just happen. It's actually, positive change really comes about when people come together and make really deliberate decisions to work for that change. So, I think that when we come together and identify a problem and work towards an issue collectively, we can actually do some really amazing things. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I would just say to recognise that over the last couple of years we've all gone through a collective trauma, and everyone's had different levels and experiences of what that's meant for them. But the one thing that unifies us all is that we all went through something. And no matter what stage you are at right now or what place you feel like stepping out to or stepping into, it's something that unifies us. So let that be something that you can launch from and launch into. It connects us. You can use that in conversation or in how you want to do something or how you want to step into the world. And as you're communicating with people, try to do it in a softer way, not always in a harsher way, because everyone's still going through their own journey at this time.
Awesome, thank you. Do you have any final words?
I just think that it's really important to listen to each other. Whilst you might not feel comfortable stepping out, there are other people who are very comfortable coming back out. And I just think it's really important to listen to what is actually being said to you by other people, instead of sort of just hearing what you want to hear, instead of glazing over the little nuggets that some vulnerable people do leave you and you just go, oh, they're okay. It's really important to listen to each other, and I think that's what I really learnt during lockdown, was listening to my partner, listening to my friends, what they actually need. So if you do see somebody, if you're out, whether it be at a nightclub or an event or just even something that's a lot more social, and there is somebody that's talking to you that maybe never met before, it's important to listen to what they're saying, because they might be asking you for some help indirectly, and I think that's really important. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you. A round of applause for all of our very special guests tonight. So, Meredith, Joshua, Craig, Gabrielle, Dean, Damien, all of you beautiful people, please know that if you take, well, hopefully one or more things away from today, we're not alone, we have each other, and it's about time. If you're not there yet, start dipping your toe in the water of reconnecting to queer community, because we are each other's family. And also, thank you all for coming tonight. For everyone who's watching the live feeds, and thank you for coming along, Brett, all the staff. I hope you have a great day, and thank you, everyone.